We always talking about the opioid plague, but there's another plague actually going on in the US at the same time, and that is meth, the not so new epidemic, meth addiction. Here we go. Some crystal meth right there. Meth is surging in the US again in the shadows of the opioid plague and may not be getting the attention it deserves. Meth addiction is another worsening drug plague. Wow, they said it was a drug plague in the article. Woo! That is increasingly becoming uncontrollable. In contrast to the last methamphetamines epidemic, which began in the 1990s, rural meth labs are now a rarity, and the fires and explosions that made headlines back then are practically non-existent today because a lot of it is coming in from Mexico. And they said the Mexican meth is a lot purer than what people made in their garage or in their homes back in the day. Unfortunately, this had led to a very false assumption that if meth labs are down, meth use is down. But large quantities of pure, affordable meth of clandestine labs in Mexico have taken the place of local labs all over the country. The majority of methamphetamines is now smuggled across the southwest border, according to the Drug Enforcement Administration's 2016 National Drug Threat Assessment Summary. Its purity is high, and its street price is relatively low, much cheaper than heroin. According to the same assessment, nearly a third of American law enforcement agencies rank methamphetamines as the biggest drug threat in their areas, and the problem seems to be growing. In 2016, 43% of law enforcement agencies in the Southwest and 71% in the Southwest listed methamphetamines as the biggest drug stimulant. So locally, it's a big threat in certain areas of the country. Nationwide, regular use of the inexpensive and widely available illicit stimulant increased from 3 to 4% of the population between 2010 and 2015, according to SAMHSA. During the same period, heroin use shot from 1 to 2% of the population. 4 million people abuse methamphetamines on a regular basis, and another 12 million have tried it at least once. In 2015, the most recent year for which federal data is available, nearly 4,900 meth users died of an overdose. That represents a 30% increase over 2014. Researchers on longtime meth users reveal that almost always become addicted, and the effects of methamphetamines on chronic users are severe, especially in the brain. The most infamous effect of meth on long-term users is psychosis, also called tweaking. Yeah, that's when they're shaking around and talking, incoherently, where the user loses contact with reality. Meth psychosis closely resembles acute paranoia, schizophrenia, and can be difficult differentiating the two on the scene. The definitive diagnosis of methamphetamine psychosis is made after performing a thorough history, physical exam, urine drug screen, and reality testing. However, there are usually additional telltale signs of meth-induced psychosis when an officer arrives on the scene. Methamphetamines overstimulates the temporal lobe of the brain, which can create psychosis. This is also the commonly affected area in human brains in patients with schizophrenia. Studies report that psychosis is experienced by 2/3 of methamphetamine users. Dependence on methamphetamines is the key risk factor for psychosis. Additional factors affect the occurrence and course of psychotic symptoms. Number of years of abuse, sleep deprivation, concurrent mental illness, and mixing meth with alcohol or other drugs. And I tell you what, it does more than that. You see the way they age on this shit? It's almost like they go from being someone young to looking elderly in a very short period of time. The characteristics of psychosis is the presence of three prominent features: hallucinations, delusions, and paranoia. And you can see it all broken down here. All right, I'm just going to go over that. Aggression. This is obviously one of the most fundamental concerns for law enforcement. Methamphetamines impairs the frontal lobe of the brain, which controls judgment and impulse control. Meth overstimulates. Okay, so because their behavior is aggressive, that's where, because you do occasionally hear about law enforcement saying how they'll go out on the scene to a drug addict and they'll actually fight the officers. And I guess this is a good example of what meth does as far as altering your behavior. And they also have obsessive compulsive behavior. All right, so go down a little further. In methamphetamine overdose, death is typically caused by a stroke or heart attack and is characterized by extreme sweating as the body overheats prior to death. Because methamphetamines represents a lower risk of overdose than drugs such as opioids, many use it for decades, which often results in gradual organ failure and death. These deaths are typically not counted in overdose statistics. Why? It's a drug death. That is weird. So you're never going to get a true number as far as how many people have died from drug overdose because they're not counting everything. And so really the numbers that we're giving are false. So at the end of the year, they're going to count the opioids. Well, we know they don't even do that because if the families say they don't want that on the death certificate, they don't even put it on there. So that's another one that's not counted. Wow, it's so much deception. There are no FDA-approved medications exist to stop craving for methamphetamines. As a result, methamphetamine treatment primarily consists of outpatient therapy, often after a brief stay in a residential facility. The drug of choice to treat people going through acute methamphetamine psychosis is Haldol. Okay. Methamphetamine users who experience psychosis can become hostile and aggressive. They will have a high level of energy and will be very alert and unpredictable, which makes them practically dangerous. Yeah, but they're out here shooting Black people that's not even doing a fraction of that. Often attempts to calm and contain them will result in further aggression and violence. It's difficult to negotiate with them because they are not in a rational state of mind. They may present with excited delirium syndrome. Be prepared to activate the EMS system. According to Kimberly Johnson, director of the Center for Substance Abuse Treatment at the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, tackling a new meth addiction wave on top of an opioid plague could strain the nation's healthcare system. It will. It will. And I think that's why Trump don't want to sign that declaration, because they've already poured millions, billions really, into this, and it's no end in sight. Think about the additional strain to the nation's law enforcement and legal systems. It's mind-boggling. All right. So, on top of opioids, heroin, fentanyl, now there's another wave of a meth plague out here as well. Ladies and gentlemen, tell me what you think. Please leave your comment and subscribe. And if you can donate to my channel, please do. Peace, family.